with these lessons, I'm not going to get too remedial in terms of like explaining how a TV show works. I assume if you're watching this, you probably have some level of understanding, but I will start with going over some basics. The other thing I'll say is I'm teaching these lessons, much more geared toward when you're script writing a show or a movie that, I guess more a TV show, but anything that's shooting versus like, script writing a show where it's like everything's being written before you ever shoot anything. The final draft mechanics that we'll cover will be the same. It's just more so, in terms of distribution and things like that. We're going to be talking about, working more for something that's being shot. Your job as a scriptwriter, in the most basic sense, is that before any document goes out to the masses, and we'll talk in a moment about who those masses are, whether it be a story area or an outline or eventually a script, it's always going to come to you first for proofing and formatting and then distribution. So the masses that you're going to be sending to generally are going to be production, anybody who's on the crew who's going to be shooting it, and the director, all those kind of people, the writing staff, the post department, and then the studio and network. And depending on the show, there could be lots more people you're going to be sending to, but those are just the basic. Hopefully, production will handle getting it to cast, because that is probably the most. Cast are going to be the people generally that the showrunner is going to be the most sensitive about when they get to read the script. So hopefully it's not going to be your responsibility to be sending to them. So this is the general progression here, what you see on this document of how script goes from, or an episode goes from the first document all the way up to eventually being a shooting script. So you're going to start with a story area, or a story area, which is like a 1 or 2 page document that'll go to the studio and the network just to say, like, this is kind of what we're thinking about for the episode. And they'll say, give notes, and they'll say, okay, great, go off and write it. So then you write your outline, and then you'll get to script. And when I say you, I just mean the show. You're not the one composing these documents and sending them off. It's your boss doing it. Story area and outline are Microsoft Word documents. We're not going to cover how to format a Microsoft Word document. So ideally, the first script that you're going to put out is going to go to the studio and the network. Sometimes those are separate entities depending on the show. Sometimes they're the same. For our purposes, we're going to pretend studio and network is just one thing, because it's the same type of draft, so I don't want to waste time teaching you how to proof 2 of the same types of drafts. Sometimes you'll need to put out what's called a prep or a concept draft. If prep is like a week of meetings leading up to before you start shooting an episode, and production needs a script, obviously, to do the prep meetings off of. And sometimes the showrunner just doesn't have time to get a studio draft out before you start prepping, so they'll give you what's called a prep or a concept draft to put out. It's not a draft that showrunner generally would ideally want people to see, but if production needs something, sometimes you don't have a choice. So that's why I put it in parentheses, because you're not always going to put that out, but sometimes that is the first draft that goes out. So once you get the notes back from the studio and network, then you go off to your white or production draft, and that's sort of your base draft that you're going to then be publishing locked revisions from. And I know locked pages probably doesn't mean anything to you right now, but it will as we go through these lessons. So you have your white draft, and the reason that shows put out revision pages in color is because, let's say like the white production draft is like 45 pages, and the showrunner or the writer wants to put out like 2 pages of revisions. You're not going to make people print out a 45 page script to only change 2 pages. So you're going to put out 2 blue pages, and then people are going to collate them into their white production draft. And again, we're going to go over how to lock pages so it doesn't mess up the continuity of the page numbering. So the general color progression of your revisions is going to go blue, then pink, then yellow, then green, then goldenrod. And the reason I put these dashed lines is because Up to goldenrod, that's a pretty standard color progression for every show. After goldenrod, it just kind of depends on the show. Some shows after goldenrod, you'll just go back to white and you'll do double white and then double blue and so on. Some shows you'll do salmon, cherry, lavender, gray. There's all kinds of different colors you might do. Again, it just depends on the show. What I want to show you is my folder structure. So anytime that you're doing any kind of document management, organization is obviously very, very important. So the way that, and as we go through these lessons, we're going to build this folder from scratch, but I just want to show you what it's going to look like when it's done. So as you can see, I have everything organized by letter here. You have story areas. I don't have a folder here for outline because I just copied this folder from a show that I had worked on. We didn't do outlines on that show, so there's no outlines here. But you have your story area. You go to network and studio. So if you're trying to find the network file, you're going to go to network, and then it says finals and originals. It's going to go to finals. If you're thinking that this seems a little redundant to have this many folders, that's by design. That's because when you're sending a document to hundreds of people, you want to be really, really sure that you're grabbing the right document. And the more sort of redundancies, the more files you can put in the file path, the less chance you have of grabbing the wrong document. The reason it says finals and originals is because when the showrunner sends me a document, I never work off the original document. I always duplicate it and work off the duplicate. That's because when you are getting into like a final draft document, sometimes you can get a little too creative, especially when it's a lock script, and you kind of just mess up the script and you want to throw it, you kind of want to just throw it away and start over. So it's easier to have the original just sort of easily accessible. And then I've never had this situation, but I suppose there could be an instance where your showrunner could say, like, can I see the original document I sent you because something, in the one that went out is not lining up. Again, I've never had that situation, but you just want to be able to have access to the original file just in case. So it's the same thing for script. So this would be script, you do network, finals, and original, same thing. Production, this is once you get into your colored scripts. So again, it's all in nice, like, organized by color. Like we went over on our color wheel. Same thing with title pages. I don't work off the same title page. I duplicate, so I just have them all right here. And we knew from production we went up to goldenrod, so the current working draft or the work in progress file is right here. That would be salmon because we ended with goldenrod, so we didn't have to put out any more pages after goldenrod, but if we had to, they would be salmon pages. So when you're a script coordinator, you need to make sure that the writers or the showrunner, whoever's doing the revisions, are working in the right colored file. Because if production is expecting salmon pages and the writer works in the blue file, it's going to be, and they send it to you, it's going to make your life not fun having to put those changes from the blue script into, the script that they should have worked on. So you just always need to be sort of in control. So every time you publish a script, and we're going to go over this again, but every time you publish a script, you're going to send a work in progress file with the next color set up for the writer to work off of. So that's why that's there. It says clearance and BS&P. I don't have the reports in here because legally I don't know if I'm allowed to show you clearance reports from a show that I worked on. Probably not. But it's pretty simple. One of your responsibilities as a script coordinator is to handle clearances, which means after you publish a draft, you'll get a report. You won't generate this report. Your clearance department will send it to you. And it'll say, like, this character name is not permitted for use, or, you can't say McDonald's. You need to come up with a fake fast food restaurant or some stuff like that. So you'll just work with your showrunner and say, like, such and such name didn't clear. Here, they'll usually want you to generate a list of names. I guess a little important tidbit, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but is the clearance people will usually charge the show by, so you can't send them 20 names and say clear all of them and then we'll just choose the one we like best. They're going to charge you per name that they have to clear. So you want to just tell them, like, here's a list of 5 names, clear these. When you hit a winner, stop. Hopefully that makes sense. So then, and again, you'll just be the point person between your showrunner and the clearance department. And then clearances are sort of take a lot more of your time when you're working on a show that exists in the real world. So for example, if you were working on like a superhero show, mainly fictional stuff, so clearances won't be too much for you. But if you're working on a real world show, clearances can be, a fairly in depth thing to have to keep track of. And then BS&P stands for Business Standards and Practices. And that's another report, a much shorter report that will be sent to you that'll just say, like, you can't use this profane language, or you can't show this, if you're going to show this person with no clothes on, it needs to be, a lot of times they'll say the glute needs to be optically obscured, things like that. Or like with violence. But again, it's none of these decisions are on you. It's really just for you to communicate with your showrunner and say, BS&P says we can't do this. And then it's up to them to handle it how they want to handle it. Then we have our one-line schedule. So on a movie or a TV show, the way that schedules are done is on something called a one-liner or a one-line schedule. I just stole this one off the internet. It's obviously just like a dummy one that someone made, because as you see, the scenes are in order here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Probably not going to generally be shooting scenes in order like that. You're going to be shooting them by location. But unfortunately, they have their locations right here all the same. Anyway, so as you can see, you have your shooting day here, March 28th. You have the scenes that are going to be shot, and then the cast. This is listed by their number on the call sheet. You need to always just sort of, as a script coordinator, be aware of this schedule and know what's shooting, because you'll often have instances where the showrunner will say, I know I need to change something in scene 3, but since that doesn't shoot till next week, let's hold off and see if any other changes come up, to publish with it. And if not, we'll just put out scene 3. But remind me before scene 3 is going to shoot, remind me that we need to put that change out. So set whatever reminder you have to set for yourself to be able to say, all right, boss, scene 3 shoots tomorrow. Do you want to put any other changes? And you're going to have a call sheet, which is a better schedule to look at for that day. But, if you get revisions and you see that it's something that's shooting, like, again, when we put out our script, we'll go over this. But if it's something that shoots tomorrow or that day, especially, you want to be able to give production like a really heads up, like, oh, this affects tomorrow, or this doesn't affect tomorrow. So again, you just need to always be aware of what the schedule is for what's going to be shot. One other thing about clearances, and don't be alarmed by the change in the desktop background. As I've gone through the video, there's things that come up where I'm like, oh, I should have told them this, and then I went and recorded it later and dropped it in to this point in the video because I think it's important things to tell you. Anyway, with clearances, your responsibility as a script coordinator is to script clearances. All the other departments, like props, art department, they all do their own clearances, wardrobe, whatever. They're all responsible for their own clearances. I say this because my very first script coordinator job, I worked on a first season cable show, and I somehow got saddled with doing the clearances for every department. And like, I don't know if anybody was trying to be like, I don't know, nefarious. But whatever. I was like drowning because I didn't know any better. I thought I had to do all these clearances. I didn't know that doing clearances for other departments was not my responsibility. And I was drowning. But I didn't know any better. And then season 2, I moved into a different role on the show. And the script writer who took over for me was more experienced, and she told, all the departments, she was like, what you guys did in season 1 with the clearances was BS, and you're doing your own clearances moving forward. And with these clearances, after the first draft that you put out, in this case, let's say it's the studio network draft, you're going to get that report we talked about. You're going to get the clearance report and the BS&P report. But then after that, every subsequent draft that you put out, you're not going to get a full report for those drafts. You're just going to generally get an email from the clearance department saying like, clearances has no problem with the blue pages, the yellow, whatever. Same thing with BS&P. BS&P has no problem with the pink pages. So that report you're only going to get that full report after you put out the first draft. One other thing I want to show you. This is a folder from someone who I had taken over for as a script writer on a show. And I don't mean to rag on this person, but for scale, I want to show you what like a more disorganized folder looks like, and the reasons why having an organized folder is so important. So like they have I don't they just have this file sitting here. I mean, it's a final draft file, but I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a colored script or a studio draft or what it is. Then they have this folder that says final draft documents and like whatever. If they want to keep their final draft documents separate from their published scripts, that's fine. My issue is like their colors are all out of order here. So like if things are just like hot and panicked and your showrunner is like on the phone or they're standing over your shoulder and they're like, what's the next color draft? I need it now. You don't want to have to be like, wait, so it's white, then blue, pink. Yeah, I guess we'd be on green. You just want to know. You want to have it in nice, like organized order, like I showed you how my folder is. And like the same thing with their published scripts and their title pages, like all out of order. Or if it's like 1 in the morning and you've just finished proofing a script and you can barely see straight, you've proofed it and built the script and done all that and composed your email, and then you go to grab the script and you're like, wait, what color did I just proof? You don't want to accidentally grab the wrong script because your colors are all out of order here. You just want to have it, in nice, neat, organized order.